Hello, I'm Sue Landay. I'm from Trainer's Warehouse. This is Show and Share. And today we're talking about personality styles and types and assessments and all those good things that we do with our trainees and our leader in our groups to learn a little bit more about ourselves and each other. We have a new tool that I'd like to introduce you to. But I also have gotten some feedback and some input from the ATD, their new community. So I'll be sharing a little bit of that also. So before we dive in too deep, we have a question that I want to start with. And actually, even before that, I'm going to ask you to take yourselves off mute. And on the count of three, we're just going to say hello to each other in whatever language you choose. You ready? I'm seeing the mutes go off. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hello.
Hola.
Thanks for all being here. And that's another trick that I learned from some of my other show and share presenters. And I'm also joined, we have a few ringers on the call. So Patty Masulo who does a lot of style type and assessment training with HRDQ is with us today. And I think we're going to have a few others who are pretty experienced in this area. So hopefully we'll have some good conversation. All right. So before we get too far in, let me just share my screen. And we have a connections question. And I'm going to ask you to not put your answer or not share your chat. Don't click hit and share yet. But to answer this question, a personality quality you possess that you feel proud of. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to just jot something in your chat. And then when I say go, we'll see what we have to share. All right. 1, 2, 3, hit it. Awesome, awesome. So now I'm going to have you take a moment to look through one another's entries and find someone that you'd like to ask them a little bit something about what they wrote. And I'll ask for 2 volunteers to unmute and address one of our fellow colleagues on the call. Who will get us started?
Sorry, what are we volunteering for again?
Just to look up and down the chat and find someone else's entry that you'd like to ask them about and just say, tell me more about this.
Gina, because we both have the same thing. Gina Kennedy? Kennedy. Hi, Gina. We both have the same thing of curiosity.
So Gina, can you share a little bit about your curiosity and why you feel proud of it?
I just like to figure things out, why things work, why people work the way they do. Always looking to find something else new. And I think that's the way you keep growing, is you keep moving forward, keep learning.
Love it. All right, let's take one more.
I'm curious what SM, Sarah, I guess that's Metcalf, means by looking at situations with half glass full mindset. What do you mean by that, Sarah?
Well, sometimes when you're having a conversation with people and you're kind of figuring out a scenario, I tend to try and think about what might be, essentially the small win, or sort of what might be the positive that could come out of it, even though it looks like a bleak situation.
Ah, oh, good one.
Thank
I
you.
try.
A glass half full. Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. And all right, let me go back to my screen share for a second here. And like I said, one of the things that we're doing today is introducing this new tool called the Discovering Styles Thumball. I know that a lot of you are familiar with this line of products, but this one's a little bit different. And I'm eager to just kind of think about and brainstorm think about and share, I guess I should say, how we envision folks using it, but also give all of you an opportunity to share your thoughts and brainstorms about how you feel like you could put it to use. So just to kind of back up a step though, we realize that there a lot of personality style tools out there. And, you probably see some that you're familiar with and perhaps some that you're not so familiar with. Let me ask you to take a moment in the chat to share what is the tool that you typically use, because I probably don't have them all, and just kind of get a sense of where we are together. I need to change my view for a second here. So I can see side by side. Where is it? Here we go. Okay. So DISC MBTI 16 personalities. I just learned about this as a new one and I'm very excited about it. It's, always great to have a new tool out there. DISC, what's my style? And that's the HRDQ body of type tools. So what is both interesting and challenging and an opportunity about this is that with each of those, as you likely know, there is, each of them has different words, different colors, different explanations, right? So the challenge in developing a tool that will work for all of them is something that can kind of cross over all of these different assessment types and still be used to help people understand kind of how different qualities and characteristics work. So I wanted to kind of take a step back and say, why do we use assessment tools? And like I said, I also kind of went to the ATD community site. And as I understand it, it's understanding that there are different styles, appreciating some of these differences and not pigeonholing and labeling people to build relationships, remembering which is which, and practice. So to that end, in this kind of world, there are a lot of tools that people typically use. So at the end of any assessment, there's always the report, right? And people kind of use that to understand, for participants to understand their own style, and to think about how they can work more effectively with others. So there's a bunch of activities that people shared with me, and I've listed some of them here. And as we kind of go down the road, we can, share a little bit more ideas if you have some as well to share. So how does the ball work? All right. So here it is. Again, a little bit different from some of our others. So instead of a whole prompt on this ball, there's different qualities. So I think you can kind of see some of them. The one I'm looking at right now says organized, masterfully creates order from chaos. So people wouldn't know what to do with that prompt until you say, here's the question we're going to answer when you catch the ball. And they're going to reply to your question according to whatever prompt is under their thumb. So if your goal is self-understanding, you might say, when you catch the ball, read this style and say, do you identify with this style? So introverted, thrives in small groups and quiet spaces. I could then talk about my understanding of how I identify with that type. If you have different goals and at different parts of your session, of your assessment session, it might be about valuing differences, understanding the different styles, eliciting stories. So you share a story about the positive impact this style might have on you, and so forth. All right, let me just kind of take a look at the group and say, is this making sense so far? Okay, I'm seeing heads nodding. Okay, just a couple more slides and then I'm going to kind of come back and talk a little bit more about it. Okay, sorry to be jumping back and forth. Thanks though. All right. So again, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you might be asking different questions. So appreciating differences, how could you use this quality in a positive way? In what situations might this quality or characteristic be most effective? If you're trying to focus on like which is which, you might say, okay, resilient, which of our types, or you may not call them types or, personas might this fall into? Or it might be that you want to really get into practicing and say, how could you handle someone with this quality? So, few more games, but before I focus on that, let me just kind of take a break here and ask you guys, what are some of the questions that you could envision? First of all, does this seem like, like a useful tool to all of you? And how could you envision using it? What questions might you ask? And let's kind of take a moment. Let me welcome you all to unmute and just kind of share your thoughts about it. I would appreciate that.
I'll share. I was thinking that it would be good to use it. So for instance, if I was working in a group, in a workshop with a group that all work together with all different personalities, I would have someone take the ball, and if they came up with a trait that was different than theirs, talk to them about how, give them an example of. So for instance, let's just say somebody has if I was using DISC, I would say, that domineering personality, get to the point, but you're more conscientious, more steady, more analytical. What is a good way, like maybe pose a question with them and say, what would be the best way to handle this with a different personality than yours? I guess it depends on which personality test you're using, but we do that. I do that a lot in my workshops where two completely different personalities will come together, and sometimes they can't agree on things because the person that wants to get right to the point can't deal with the person who talks really slow, and just giving them ideas of how to work together and blend their personalities, not to change who they are, but to just be able to come alongside and have a good conversation with somebody that's different than you.
I like that. I was also thinking, and this kind of gets into some of the other games that I was going to share later, but like it could be interesting to catch the ball and look under your two thumbs, right? So I have someone I've organized and a juggler. Like, how would those two qualities interact? So that could get to both, understanding those two styles, as well as thinking about the interaction, but without it kind of getting to a personal level of, these two people interacting with that. And so I thought that that could be, competitive and organized. What does that look like when you take those two and mash them together? I have to be honest, I haven't tried it in person, but and I also think that all of you on this in the session have probably done a lot more of these sessions than I have. So that's why I encourage you and welcome you to please share your perspectives as well. But thanks, Patty. Other thoughts so far on those ideas that we've shared of questions or concerns that you might have.
I can share. So we got the thumb ball as part of we're putting together a leadership training program, and there's going to be 3 parts of the training, which are leadership styles, emotional intelligence, and then coaching different personalities. And so we kind of see this ball being part of all of those. And so some of the tasks I could see is when we talk about emotional intelligence and also coaching different personalities, throwing around and whatever they land on, them having to think through their staff and go, who on your staff would fit within that category, and how do you identify that, right? Getting them used to that. How do I process through what is the personality of the person in front of me, so I can then utilize the correct messaging with them, and know how to do that kind of stuff. When it comes to leadership styles, I also thought about it like however, wherever it lands on, just talking about how can you in your role, like I just threw it and I got visionary. So I would be, in your role could you be visionary and demonstrate that personality, but just kind of using it as a fun way to exercise some of those quick thinking, especially when it comes to personalities. That really comes in handy when you are interacting with people, and you got to interact with people to know their personalities. So you got to be able to do that quick think. And so I think this can mimic that very well and help our participants build that skill.
I also like what you said about, well, there's 2 things in particular, among all of the things that you said. The idea of kind of self-identifying, like, how am I interacting with this? And that was one that just sort of stuck out with me, of to sort of self-reflect before you are assigning others. And the other thing that's been kind of interesting is I've been hearing others react to and share some of their tips is the idea to draw out the positive aspects of each of these different qualities, and really to kind of to stress that it's not that one type or quality is better than another. We're all different, and we all have, we may show these different qualities at different times and for different purposes. And so as you're identifying a quality with a person, like you said, Joseph, like if you're saying, name a few people who might have this quality, I think it also helps to, to appreciate that they're all positive qualities, right? And it may be later in the day that you then say, okay, if we bring this to an extreme, what does it look like? But we start off with that appreciation of, it's all good. We're just all different. How do we deal with each other when we have these different qualities? Other tips, thoughts, reactions, suggestions, excitement, concern? Questions for one another?
Hi, my name's Mary, and I just wanted to say that I think what's interesting about this Discovering Styles Thumball, or even just what's on there, is that it gives also this sort of tactile approach to stuff. We usually deal in stuff that's really just, 2-dimensional, a piece of paper, or, a screen. But I think the combination of engaging with this thing that you can kind of, fidget with in some way will help a lot of people where it may not resonate with them, that you're just seeing something on paper or on a screen. And that action, it seems to me, I haven't used it, but it seems to me that of grabbing a ball, touching it with your hands, sends some, neurons up to your brain to make you think of something differently and want to share that in a way that you may not have thought of before. That's my comment.
Yeah, thank you. And I like that. And, it is one of the reasons that we wanted to create something for this is because we recognize that a lot of people just work off the reports and it's, or a cue card or here's the model and it is all flat. Yeah, Daryl, you have a contribution as well.
Hi, yeah, just a question for, I think it was Joseph who shared the example. Did you say you've already used the training ball in your leadership session?
So no, we are developing we start our pilot program here next week. So we just got the balls in and this is us planning forward, but we have not quite gone to do it yet.
Okay. And for anyone who's used it, just curious to know how you've handled any conflict in the training room. Sometimes teams can be a little dysfunctional. And I was just curious if anyone's experienced that, where there's conflict during the session.
It is brand new. So, and I did
Okay.
reach out to people who were sort of early buyers, early adopters of it. So we may not have that, but maybe we can kind of broaden that to just ask in any of your sessions with this tool or something else, are there times where you've run into challenges in terms of how you are facilitating these and how do you work through them? What are some of the strategies?
I'd like to make an observation, if I may, Sue. So often we ask people to choose which one is like them or for them or opposite of them. And one of the things I like about the ball is it's random. I'm not choosing, so it takes me off the hook. Where my thumbs land or where my thumbs land, and that's what I have to talk about. So it sort of takes people off the hook a little bit of identifying as one thing or another. It's like spontaneous, because what we want them to do is to have some familiarity and comfort with all of the styles so that they can communicate better with others, not just themselves. So every time I have people choose theirs, then they've got to stand for theirs. Whereas that random, what my thumb lands on is what I got to talk about. I think that it has a different pitch to it. It lets people off the hook.
And it may also be like, as with any kind of leadership sort of training, having a set of ground rules to fall back on, that we're not assigning meaning, we're not labeling people, we're not pigeonholing, we're thinking broadly, we're speaking for ourselves, we're to establish some of those ground rules. And if we do run into challenges, let's find a way to either both to be able to say, ouch, that felt uncomfortable to me, but also to park that in a place where we can come back to it and give it more full attention. And some of those strategies of dealing with difficult conversations could be a good preamble to this.
One of the things I always like to do is try to make people look at the positive side of different people that are different than you. We all have personality traits, and some of us are like, oh, I wish I could be more like that person, or I wish I, could be a little more talkative if I'm not, or whatever the case may be. So sometimes I think even like throwing the ball and, whatever they land on, saying, can you think of someone in your life that has this personality trait, and what is it that you like about them? What is it that you admire about them, or whatever? It could get specific to who's in the room or maybe not.
I'm going to go back to my screen share for a second because there are a few other tips that might answer Darrell's question, as well as a few other ideas. So considering the language, I thought this was a really interesting tip from one of my ATD community members. And not referring to people as a type, but rather what's your style. And, this is just an inventory of preferences, but I thought that it was really interesting how he spoke specifically about just considering what language you use. And again, this gets to sort of setting the stage. There's no one best style. And we talked about this a little bit more. And I'm happy to share some of these slides, but I felt that these were helpful to me also in framing the conversations. So a couple of other ideas that we brainstormed that I kind of like for the Thumball. We've talked a lot about focusing on a single question, and it could be also that you play this in multiple rounds. So you say, well, okay, we're going to do 3 rounds of this. Here's my first question, let's all have a turn answering. Here's the second question. Here's the third. Another kind of cool concept could be you have team play where you have 2 teams lining up facing each other, in lines. And the receiving team is going to catch the ball and read aloud the quality. And the opposite team, then, either the person directly opposite them, or you could go in turn, would answer one of these questions. Something like, describe what that quality might look like at work. So they wouldn't be reading the description on the ball. All they would hear would be like charismatic. And they might then have to describe what that quality is. Or you might ask, which of these styles in our framework could be associated with this? Is it, dominant, or is it, depending on whether you're using the MBTI or DISC or whatever? Or, as you guys have said, a colleague or teammate or a famous person who is strong in this style. And so you kind of have this back and forth and team play. And we also spoke a little bit about the style pairs, but just wanted to kind of share some other ways that you could do this, in response to that idea of just having something physical and really creating a physical activity. I thought these were kind of fun. What else do we have here? All right. We went through our tips, and I'm happy to kind of scroll back and I can share this with you. Some of these other activities and exercises that folks shared with me, not knowing about the Thumball, in terms of the sorts of activities that they tend to play when doing assessments.
So maybe we assume that these are going to show up next time you invite us to come back. They're going to be last week when we were together. Here's some, because you usually give us some notes afterwards. So I'm sitting here taking screenshots like crazy, but I'm thinking, I bet you're going to share that whole show.
I can share, I don't always, because sometimes it sort of depends on whether it's my presentation or not and who attends, but I'd be happy to share the presentation with all of the registrants. I
All those
always,
lists of activities look really good.
yeah, I thought that was a nice list too. I was really pleased with some of the feedback that I got. Sometimes we always post the new, the recording along with, in terms of our past recordings. There's a page on our website with all of those, and it's included in our emails. I don't always send along the notes, kind of depending on the nature of it. In this case, thanks. I'd be happy to send that to all of you. So, other suggestions, questions? Anything?
So when you purchase it, does it come with a list of games? Are there suggested games that come with it?
Yeah, so all of those that I showed you, on all of our Thumbballs, I don't have one in the packaging right in front of me at this moment, but they all come in like a plastic bag with like a little kind of header card over them. Thank you. Christina is showing us that right now, and I'm going to pin you so people can see it. Okay. Oh, and Sarah has one also. So inside these flaps, and I won't make you open yours right now, but all of those playing ideas and suggestions are inside on the side that you can't see right now. They're also on our website. We do try to include that information so that they're readily available. What else? Oh,
Thank you.
this is the Discovering Styles one right here, so you can kind of see it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, what else? It's 12:30. I did pretty well on time. Any other questions though? Any other things just in general about your styles and assessment training that you've got a pretty nice community of people. If you'd like to just kind of show your face, unmute, and chat with each other, we always welcome that. And if you need to bug off, I appreciate that also, and thank you for being here. All right, well, I'll stay on for a bit if you just want to ask anything else, but if not, have a great day.